Although there are lots of products out there we can purchase to use with our polymer clay, it's nice to be able to make our own and have our designs be completely original. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use items you already have in your craft studio and household to make custom border molds. Hey there, creative people, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. For this project, we're using 2-part molding putty to create our molds. If you want to know more about this product, there'll be a link in the upper right that leads to my video about it. Before you start mixing your molding putty, however, you want to be sure that you have all of your materials ready that you want to make molds of. Now is the time to take a look around your house and your studio for things like chains, cords, and things on strands that might make interesting border molds. This project got started because I had the idea to use ball chain to make border molds, and here are my 2 molds I made using 2 different sizes of ball chain. Remember that your objects don't have to be able to go in the oven. I use this larger one to trim the edge of this lentil bead. You have a little bit of time with this brand of molding putty. There are some that give you even less time, like the yellow one. I heard it sets up in just a few minutes, like maybe 3 minutes. So you might want to do a mold using that putty in a smaller batch, like 1 or 2 at a time. If you're interested in the supplies I'm using, there will be links to everything I can get links for at my blog post. You'll find a link to that post in the description box and in the I tag in the upper right of the video. If you're going to use a large amount of putty, say a 1-inch ball or more, you might want to weigh out both portions to make sure they are equal, just for accuracy's sake. In addition to your chains and cords and whatever you want to put on your putty to cure, I suggest you use a tile that will keep it all flat and even. Also have whatever you're going to use to roll it out ready, either an acrylic roller or a pasta machine. As usual, you mix equal portions of the molding putty until no streaks remain. While I'm mixing, I want to take a minute to give a shout out to all my wonderful patrons. If you're a regular and you're here every week, consider supporting this channel on Patreon. It makes a difference and is a huge factor in whether or not this channel stays on YouTube. Many thanks to those of you who are already supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. It's so encouraging to see all your levels of support. And don't forget that patrons have the opportunity to get up to 2 bonus videos a month. Once the putty is completely mixed, roll it out into a flat sheet somewhere between 2.5 and 3 millimeters thick. On my pasta machine, that's the thickest setting. One of the problems that we have sometimes with purchase border molds is that they aren't long enough. It can be a real pain to piece things together. So the nice thing about making your own is that you can make it exactly as long as you need it to be. I'm making mine about 10 inches long. This should be long enough for most of the projects I want to use a border mold on. Once your putty is mixed and rolled out flat, go ahead and start pressing in your objects. Pull them taut so that they'll be as straight as possible in the mold. Then press them in as flat and as evenly as you can. You may be able to press a flat object, such as a ruler or another tile or an acrylic block over the top afterwards to even things out. This is some wheat chain, and I also have a strand of 4 millimeter check fire polish beads. Some of the other things I've tried molding: rhinestone cup chain, box chain, a strand of daisy spacers, snake chain, twisted cording, and a strand of 3 millimeter check fire polish beads. I cut these 2 border molds apart so that they are separate, but I think it's just as easy to use a mold that's all on a sheet with others. When you're done, if you decide that you want them separated, you can cut molding putty after curing with a pair of scissors. Allow the putty to sit until when you press a fingernail into it, it doesn't leave a dent. This will tell you that it's fully cured. To use your mold, roll your clay into a thin, even snake. Make sure it's smooth without any creases. It will likely need to be smaller than you think unless you want a very thick edge under your decoration. It might take some trial and error to figure out how much clay you need to get a border the thickness you want. The trickiest thing I found about using this kind of mold is you need to press very firmly on the clay to get a good impression. And then sometimes the clay wants to stick to your fingers and lift out of the mold after you press it in. To keep this from happening, spritz a small puddle of Armor All on your work surface and then dab your fingers in it after every 2 or 3 presses into the clay. Depending on how sticky your clay is, this may not happen. You should also be careful to never lift both fingers up at the same time, but always keep one in place, holding the clay in the mold. Once you've pressed the entire length of the mold, use a ceramic tile, an acrylic block, or a flat ruler to press down on the clay so it's an even thickness. Press firmly, but don't rock, as that can cause a double impression. I'm standing up here so I can give more pressure evenly. Remove the clay border from the mold. Then place your border right side up on your tile. Give the border a gentle tug to straighten it. Then use your clay blade to straighten it some more so you can trim evenly along the edges. Just place your blade along one edge of the design and gently tap it into the blade. This will straighten it, then you can press down to trim your border neatly. As you're cutting, pay attention to where both ends of your blade are. It's easy to lose track of one end and then cut into your design and not just trim the edge like I did there. Now that it's trimmed, you can see the thickness of the clay under the trim. The more clay you start with, the thicker this will be. Here are how these borders look when molded in clay. Keep in mind, you don't just have to use polymer clay. You could use air dry or metal clay. I love how this one with the cording picked up all that soft texture. I've added some mica powder to one side of each one so you can see all the details. Here we have the rhinestone cup chain, the box chain, the daisy spacers, snake chain, the cording, and the fire polish beads. Now you won't be able to look at your household objects the same way. Take a look around your home and your studio and see what fun things you can use to create custom border molds.